Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and it's time for another edition of Breaking News. Today is Sunday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, 2024. And as we always do here every day, we have a number of stories to bring to you that have something to do with what the Bible has to say about what our world will look like at the time of the end, and that is before the second coming of Christ, and of course, of all the events preceding it. And that's what's unique about us. Our breaking news is dealing with biblical issues. It's not just news stories for the sake of news. All right, a lot going on. We're going to talk about the hostage talks. Hamas is in Egypt. No progress has been made there. We'll talk about that, contrary to some of the headlines that you see. Basically, actually tonight, Israeli time at sundown, it starts Holocaust Memorial Day. We'll talk about that a little bit and what it means. Joe Biden wants to import Palestinians to the United States. Figures that'll get him some votes and decide him up to vote for him, I guess, right away, make him voters. A terrible story. Obama's former education secretary is in a Chicago encampment where they're burning an American flag. And the speaker there made it clear that the Democrat convention shouldn't be held in Chicago this year, which is really interesting. And finally, a great article by our favorite writer, Caroline Glick, about the Jews and Democrats and how they may swing the election, that the Democrats don't need to or can't take for granted their votes any longer because of the treatment of Israel, what they see. It's really interesting. And so we'll get to those. All right. First headline. No apparent progress in hostage talks as Hamas insists war must end as part of the deal. Well, we've said that's a non-starter, of course. Hamas leaders begin a second day of talks for a truce and hostage deal with Egyptian and Qatar mediators in Cairo, with Palestinian officials saying there's no apparent progress as the terror group maintains its demand that any agreement must end the war. And of course, as we said, that's a non-starter. One Palestinian official close to the mediation effort said Hamas's delegation had arrived in Cairo with a determination to reach a deal, but not at any price. A deal must end the war and get Israeli forces out of Gaza, and Israel hasn't yet committed that it's willing to do so, an official told Reuters, asking not to be named. Another Palestinian official told Reuters negotiations are facing challenges because the occupation, namely Israel, refuses to commit to a comprehensive ceasefire, but adds that the Hamas delegation was still in Cairo and hopes mediators could press Israel to change its position. I'm sure the United States is attempting to do that also. Now, yesterday, an Israeli official, which we reported on our second breaking news, widely reported to be Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, said Israel would, under no circumstances, agree to a deal to end the war, which was sparked by the terror group's devastating October 7th attack. In response to the onslaught, Israel has launched the offensive in Gaza with the aim of freeing the hostages abducted by the terrorists on that day and dismantling Hamas, and they haven't changed their goals. So we will see. And we've said if this takes place, what a mess it's going to be. All right, our second headline is ahead of Holocaust Remembrance Day, which begins sundown tonight. Israel releases the latest demographics. Global Jewish population reaches 15.7 million. And we're going to talk about why this is really miraculous. Worldwide Jewry still falls below the pre-Holocaust levels. According to a report released by Israel's Central Bureau of Statistics in observance of Holocaust Remembrance Day, there are currently 15.7 million Jews worldwide. Among these, 7.1 million, approximately 45%, live in Israel, 6.3 million in the United States, and the rest are distributed around the world. There's still 133,000 Holocaust survivors, believe it or not, victims of anti-Semitic persecution living in Israel. And statistics show that some 245,000 Jewish survivors are still living in more than 90 countries across the USA. So even in 2024, it's interesting, the total number of Jews around the globe remains less than the Jewish population in 1939, before the outbreak of the Second World War. According to statistics at that particular time in 1939, the global Jewish population had reached 14.8 million, including 650,000 in Israel. And the total is actually more than what we have right now. And so they're getting back to the pre-World War II levels. So this is something really interesting that we see. And now this fulfills some of our 25 signs we're near the end. If you're new to us, and we have new people every day, We have a website, Educating Our World, where we have free material, free books, 65 free books in PDF form. You can download a dozen under the heading of Bible prophecy, and in particular, 25 signs. We're near the end, and you really need to download that. In our 25 signs, sign number 1 is the miracle of Israel's survival, the fact that they even exist today is amazing. And sign number 3, they'll miraculously return to their ancient homeland in the last days. And this is what's happened. And remember, it's 3 short years after the Holocaust of World War II ended that the modern state of Israel was born in May 1948. So the fact that they still exist, they're still Jews, they're back in the land. This is a fulfillment of Bible prophecy, setting the stage for what the scripture says will happen in the last days. So it's amazing to see. And so we're seeing some very fabulous things take place in the world with all the problems, too. Headline number 3, Republicans seek to prevent Joe Biden from importing Palestinians to the U.S. Representatives Andy Ogles, Republican Tennessee, Tom Tiffany, Republican Wisconsin, and Scott Perry, Republican Pennsylvania, as well as dozens of Senate Republicans are moving to prevent President Joe Biden from resettling Palestinians in American communities. In a letter to the House appropriators, these 3 representatives asked that a provision be included in the fiscal year 2025 spending bill that prohibits expenditures of any funds to issue a visa or grant parole to any alien holding a passport issued by the Palestinian Authority. And then they wrote, whatever fanciful leftist notion to the contrary, the United States of America cannot be expected to absorb the rest of the world's problems. It would make much more sense for states in the region to take in those in need if the administration is indeed working in concert with our allies in the region to pave the way for peace. That should come with the expectation that those allies are working in good faith to do their part. The letter comes as the Biden administration reportedly considers using federal government refuge resettlement program to bring Palestinians to the U.S. Last November, House and Senate Democrats circulated a similar plan. Mindlessly allowing hundreds of thousands of unvetted Palestinian aliens into our nation is an unacceptable threat to national security, Ogles told Breitbart News. The vast majority of Palestinian Arabs continue to support Hamas's butchery on October 7th and hate our American way of life. Tiffany told Breitbart News, it isn't America's responsibility or in America's best interest to let Joe Biden continue treating our country as a dumping ground for the rest of the world's problems, and suggested Palestinians be resettled in other countries in the region, not here. And meanwhile, Senator Joni Ernst from Iowa is among 35 Senate Republicans, asking Biden to provide specifics about his Palestinian refugee resettlement program, including the number the administration is looking to impact. Now, one of the things we've talked about, we haven't talked about it that much. We're going to talk about it more, but we're going to write about it. We have an appendix in our book, 25 Signs. We're near the end about the Palestinians. Who are they? The fact that they never have existed as a people. There's no Palestinian language, no Palestinian history. Basically, it started in late 1800s, 1880 on when they came to the Holy Land to work. They came from like 60 different countries around the world to work. And they were workers, and they're good people. There's nothing wrong with the people. They're made in the image of God. The sad thing is they've had leadership that's really taken advantage of. And the real sicko thing is when the War of 1948, the War of Independence ended, and they were told to leave Israel, none of these Arab countries would take them in. None of their Arab brothers would do that. The Jews will always have taken in refugees. The Arab countries have not. They put them in refugee camps. And so it is horrible what they've been through, but it's, none of the Arab countries have taken them in, and they don't want to because basically they want to put the pressure on Israel. So anyway, we'll be talking more and more about that, writing more about that, let you know when we get that done. But anyway, so Biden evidently wants to bring more voters in before the election, and he thinks this will help get Michigan in his column because they've had so many problems with the Islamic population there because of Biden and his so-called support for Israel. So we will see. All right, speaking of Biden and the Democrat Party, former Obama education secretary attends Chicago encampment with radicals connected to burning an American flag. Arne Duncan, former President Barack Obama's Secretary of Education, was photographed at an anti-Israel encampment next to a Chicago alderman who has received criticism for speaking in front of a burned American flag. In a post on social media from the Coalition of Progress staffers from the mayor's office and the Chicago City Council, Duncan was seen standing next to Alderman Byron Cijo Lopez, who represents Chicago's 25th Ward, at an anti-Israel encampment at the University of Chicago. He was seen speaking at the encampment at the university on Monday. He has previously faced criticism from several Chicago aldermen and veterans that he's captured on video speaking at the rally where an American flag was burned. How can an elected official stand over a charred American flag and advocate properly for veterans? Marco Torres, an Army veteran, said at the time. And so at this rally he attended in March, he called for the Democrat National Convention, which is set to be held in Chicago in August, to be canceled. He said, cancel the DNC, no Genocide Joe in Chicago. And that was what the banner said in front of him. So Biden is facing, of course, mounting criticism over his handling of everything, what's going on. Now, what's interesting about all of this, again, is they've kind of brought it on themselves here, these people. And what we have some other stories. Again, we can't get to all of them each day. Almost need to do 2 breaking news per day. But the people on the college campuses, these are not spontaneous, just student rebellions, as it were. There's professional agitators that are going there and doing this. This has been pre-planned for months, by the way. And so what we see, they're ginning up the students there, the useful idiots, as they've been called, to support what's going on, Hamas and their murderous tactics, and blame the victim Israel for all the problems. So anyway, there was one of these encampments at the University of Chicago. What's going to be interesting is what happens in Chicago with the Democrat convention, assuming it's going to be held there. Those of us who were around in 1968 remember what a mess that was when oh, it was terrible. The Democrat Party held it there. There was rebellion there. There was protests against the Vietnam War. The Chicago police were accused of police brutality, beating up some of the protesters there. It was really terrible. But it was probably the one presidential meeting there. Again, that was in Chicago before the convention. I've had Democrats and Republicans every 4 years, which is the most memorable in my lifetime of what happened there with the protesters, the agitators, the police, and the views it got. Now, in those days, you only had the 3 major networks here. You didn't have any internet. You didn't have any, online 24/7 news that we have now. They can get anywhere, and cameras everywhere. So it's not going to be good optics for the Democrat Party, let's say that. So we'll see what's going on, which brings us to our last story. Caroline Glick, my favorite author here. She's Jewish. She lives in Israel. Lived in Chicago for a while. She's American. Great writer, Glick, CarolineGlick.com. She had really interesting, her work is always worth reading. Every time she writes an editorial or writes a column, it's worth reading. The Jewish vote is up for grabs and it may decide the U.S. election. This is really interesting. The White House and its supporters are using Muslims in Michigan to justify a slew of deeply hostile policies against Israel. Will that matter come fall? And she said a few weeks ago, a sermon by Reform Rabbi Amiel Hirsch, the senior rabbi at the Stephen Wise Free Synagogue in New York, shocked millions from that city to Tel Aviv. Standing in his pulpit, Hirsch delivered a stern warning to the Democrats. Noting that he is someone who is finally attuned to American Jewish sentiments, Hirsch told Democratic elected officials, do not take American Jews for granted. He explained, I've spoken to many American Jews in the past few months who have surprised me with their anxiety and developments in the Democratic Party and their perception that it's becoming increasingly hostile to Israel and tolerant of anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism in its own ranks. You think so? Yeah, these leftists hate Israel. And Biden has put in his administration a bunch of anti-Israeli, anti-Semitic people in positions of authority. Be careful, he said. The results of the upcoming election do not depend only on Michigan. And many dismissed his remarks with kind of a shrug of the shoulders. And Republicans have asked conservative Jews to explain how it is that American Jews vote for the Democratic Party candidates, even though the Republicans are much more supportive of Israel. The question comes up so frequently that most conservative Jews can give answers in their sleep. First, most American Jews see themselves first and foremost as Democrats or liberals, not as Jews. They love Israel, but they're not really voting on an issue. It's not a voting issue for them. And second, the Jewish vote doesn't matter because most American Jews live in deep blue states that will never tilt Republican. Well, that could all change. And it's a great article. She goes on and on with what's taking place there. So it's worth looking at, CarolineGlick.com. All right, so the election's 6 months out, and Biden is now making a number of moves that will cause try and win his reelection. What will the Jewish vote do? By the way, as I'm doing this, my little app, the red alert, has just shown six different uh, alerts right now as it comes on my screen where there's some type of attack in Israel. And if you don't have that app called Red Alert Israel, it'll give you, it plays a little, I turned the sound down, but it plays a little sound every time there's an attack, and rocket attack is in Israel right now. I've had about six different places. Just let me know that. Now make that 8. Anyway, make that 9. Anyway, bottom line is Israel is still getting it left and right. This is from Hezbollah for the most part, which is a whole nother story. We've got a story hopefully to get to about Hezbollah's air defenses are a lot better than Israel had imagined. They're very sophisticated. Their tunnel system is actually better in southern Lebanon than the tunnel system in Gaza, which is the most sophisticated thing you've ever seen. So anyway, they've got to face all that. So here we are again, all these things taking place at the same time. What we do know, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know what's going to happen with the election. We don't know what's going to happen with Israel in the short term. But here's what we do know: the future has been laid out for us in God's word. And again, I'll just read you our 25 signs. We're near the end. Sign 1: the miracle of Israel's survival. Again, what's going to be celebrated tonight. Not celebrated, but reminding of the Holocaust, a reminder that the Jews are still existing. That is a miracle, literally their survival. Sign number 2 is their enemies have done to Israel, so God will do to them. We document the enemies in the past. The Amalekites, Ammonites, Moabites, Edomites, and the Philistines all tried to destroy Israel. They are gone now. Israel still exists, as the Bible predicts. Sign 3, they'll miraculously return to their ancient homeland in that last days. That has happened, and that's why we see them right now, 3 years after the Holocaust. The nation of Israel will return in 2 stages. We emphasize that. The first stage is an unbelief. They come on their own. When Christ comes back, he'll bring the rest of them back to the land. Jerusalem will be united under Israeli rule. That took place in 1967. Israel being the world's spotlight, well, every single day they are amazing. This tiny little country, size of Lake Michigan, New Jersey, in the world spotlight. And finally, continual search for peace for Israel. And that's what they've seen since their modern state was born or reborn in 1948. These are signs of the end, and they're all right in front of our very eyes. So please take advantage of it. Again, the book's a free download, Educating Our World. All our material is free there, and it's all for you to take advantage of. Anyway, that's what's going on right now. Thanks for watching. I'm Don Stewart. Until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless you.